Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Continuing Education, Bachelor's Degree Program, Elective Course, Rural Development, BRDE 101 Rural Development, Indian Context, Block-2 Rural Development, Unit 3 Rural Social Development. 3.0 Aims and Objectives. This unit aims to explain the concept of rural social development. It will also discuss the necessity of rural social development, and the programs initiated for social development in our country. At the end of this unit, you must be able to understand the concept and meaning of rural social development. Give reasons for justifying the rural social development in India. Identify strategies and major programs from the angle of rural social development, and classify rural social development programs with the help of its indicators. 3.1 Introduction. You have, in the previous unit, conceptualized the meaning, nature and approaches etc. of rural development. You are aware that Indian rural society is sum of complexity in terms of its socio-economic and political structures. Therefore, it is difficult to pursue path of rural social development smoothly. For a long period, it is considered that economic development is equipped to transform the rural society. But, now it is realized that without social development, there are difficulties in accelerating the process of rural development for the well-being of the rural masses. Often, rural development has meant economic development which includes improvements in the techniques of cultivation, extension of irrigation, expansion of electricity and road etc. This is a very restricted view of rural development through agriculture and other economic activities. At the heart of it does not conceptualize rural development holistically. Now, the concept of rural development has changed. Since community initiatives are diverse and are often chosen in an isolated manners, it is imperative to take a conscious decision to link the activities with government initiatives in promoting socio-economic development of the rural society. The term rural social development means area-specific desirable change in rural society. Before the discussion of rural social development, we should know the concept of rural development. Actually, rural development means all-around development of rural society with a view to the betterment in the living standards of rural people in rural areas. In this sense, rural development, like development in general, is a multidimensional process. In the purely social sense, it covers a number of indicators of rural society, such as education, rural health care, nutrition, housing, drinking water, sanitation and cultural development etc. 3.1 Rural social development. After the worldwide recognition of social development, there must be no confusion about the importance of social development. The concept of rural social development is not confined only to the social services or economic growth but an overall development of rural society. Before the explanation of the concept of rural social development, we should be very clear in our concepts which are related to the social development. Rural social development is a part of overall development of rural society. As Tadaro stated, rural development encompasses 1. Improvement in level of living, including employment, education, health and nutrition, housing and a variety of social services. 2. Decreasing inequality in the distribution of rural income, and rural-urban balances in income and economic opportunities. And 3. The capacity of the rural sector to sustain and accelerate the pace of these improvements. The concept of social development is different from the term social evolution, social progress and social change. Social evolution is a natural process whereby a simple society evolves into complex one, as McIlver and Page stated, when there is not only continuity of change but also direction of change, we mean evolution. According to Herbert Spencer, in beginning, human society was very simple. Socio-1 relations were direct. All the functions were the entire process of economic, socio-cultural and political domain of human life. Hence, social development is a process of transformation of traditional society to a modern society. According to Pathak, 1987, social development is a comprehensive concept which implies major structural changes, political, economic and cultural which are introduced as a part of deliberate action to transform society. In this perspective, we may say that in India the programs of land reform, small family norms, eradication of illiteracy, introduction of Panchayati Raj etc. are related to rural social development. According to Rao, 1987, social development consists largely of efforts to improve the social situation in regard to social environment, housing, health and nutrition, education and training, employment and working conditions, social security, social stability and social welfare. Thus, the rural social development has been described as a process aimed at improving the well-being of people living in rural areas. It needs to establish the required special institutions, infrastructure and services in the area of health and nutrition, education and literacy, basic amenities, family planning etc. 3.2.1 Indicators of Rural Social Development. The term rural social development refers to social change in rural areas. See more than two-thirds of the Indian population lives in rural areas and most of it depends on agriculture and allied activities for a livelihood. The purpose of social development should be to create such conditions in which each group or community with distinctive and identifiable problems would be able to lift itself. It should overcome its limitations and improve its living conditions and take the benefits of economic opportunities. Development is a multi-dimensional process. It is not purely an economic process, this is only one of the components of development. Development must also include changes in the institutional, social structure and administrative setup as well as change in habits, customs and beliefs etc. This includes all the indicators highlighted in the 17th Statistical Commission of United Nations. Statistical Commission has highlighted some 45 indicators of social development which may be clubbed into 8 categories: population, health, housing, nutrition, education and culture, employment and social security/individual security and consumption, property and social welfare. There are various factors responsible for social development. Some of the important factors are as follows: 1. Nutrition, 2. Clean drinking water, 3. Housing, 4. Education, 5. Employment, 6. Health, 7. Sanitation, protection and development of environment, 8. Recreation and games and 9. Protection. 11. Development of cultural heritage. 3.3 Why rural social development? The most important reason why rural social development must be undertaken is that most of the country's population lives in rural areas which is deprived of the benefits of development. Rural development has remained at the center stage of national development, but poverty has persisted despite government's planned efforts to tackle it since independence. Rural development remained confined to urban industrial pockets and to a few rural showpiece projects. During the course of last 5 decades, developmental efforts in social sector of development was neglected. Therefore, rural social development is essential to enhance the quality of life of rural people and to have access to basic amenities. Rural social development is related with the human needs. From this point of view, rural social development must satisfy the following basic needs of rural people. 1. It should fulfill the basic social needs of the rural people. The social needs are education, healthcare, nutrition, housing and recreation etc., which should be fulfilled smoothly in rural society. 2. It should promote human self-respect. Increased availability of basic needs which is not sufficient. Besides it, there must be human dignity. In such a venture the absence or denial of self-esteem is an index of retrogression. 3. It should enhance the quality of life. Any kind of servitude reflects a state of underdevelopment. Therefore, freedom from all types of exploitation is necessary for social development. When development ensures these conditions in rural areas, it is called rural social development. But without its expansion as social opportunities it is not possible. Most of the schemes and programs of rural social development clearly state or implies that their main purpose is to secure continuous improvement in living conditions for the population at large, and that the promotion of rural social development is regarded as a supplementary means to the economic growth. The economy of any nation depends on human resource development. In an agriculture-based economy such as ours, we need to provide basic amenities of life to rural people such as safe drinking water, good sanitation, health facilities, education and good housing. Without rural social development, they will not be able to participate actively and efficiently in the process of development. Therefore, the importance of rural social development is multidimensional. For the achievement of major objectives important in the process of rural social development, a continuous effort is required to ensure social justice, check economic inequalities, eradicate social inequalities, improve living conditions of rural people, uplift weaker sections of the society, equal distribution of social benefits, check high growth rate of population, and create appropriate opportunities for rural employment. Check your progress 1. Note: I. Give your answer in the space given below for each question. 2. Check your answer with the preceding text. 1. Explain the concept of rural development. 2. Why do we need focus on rural development? 3.4 Rural social development, strategies and programs. The critical element in rural development is improvement of living standard of rural people. The quality of life is an important determinant of the success of rural social development, which can be measured by human resource development in terms of education, health coverage, access to sanitation and safe drinking water, etc. Now we will discuss these in detail. 3.4.1 Education. Education and literacy are the foundation and essence of all human development. A literate environment is fundamental for empowering citizens with their literacy confidence levels. After independence of the country, the provision of free and compulsory education to all children up to the age of 14 years in Indian Constitution is now amended as a fundamental right. During the last 5 decades, several commissions on Indian education have reviewed and suggested important recommendations for primary level of education. The National Policy on Education, 1968 and 1986 were 2 important documents which marked a significant step in the history of education in India. Since the adoption of 1968 policy, there has been considerable expansion in educational facilities all over the country. The National Policy on Education, 1986 has identified the concern areas and given thrust on I. National System of Education, 2. Education for Equity, 3. Emphasis on elementary education, 4. Making the system work, and v. Management of education. The following table highlights the progress in primary education since 1950. Table 3.1, Progress in Primary Education. Look at the screen for table content. For a long period, proper attention was not paid to rural education. The educational environment in the rural area was not conducive for attracting children. Besides it, low government spending on education has led the problem of illiteracy in rural areas also. Table 3.2, Adult Literacy Rate. Look at the screen for table content. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, SSA. Since the World Conference on Education for All, EFA, held in Jammu, Thailand in 1990, a number of initiatives have been taken to achieve the goals of Bowery-Fold. The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, SSA, the latest of all such programs, has created an enabling condition for the effective implementation of Bowery-Fold. The SSA, launched in the year 2000, covers all the districts of the country. Government of India has identified the area of concern to be addressed through SSS. The major objectives of SSA are to have all children in school, educate and guarantee center/alternate school/back to school camp by 2005. Have all children complete 5 years of primary schooling by 2007. Have all children complete 8 years of schooling by 2010. Provide elementary education of satisfactory quality with emphasis on education for life. Bridging all gender and social gaps at the primary stage by 2007, and at the elementary education level by 2010, and effect universal retention by 2010. Government of India released the funds for Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and the expenditure incurred on it is given below. Table 3.3, Release of the funds for SSA. Look at the screen for table content. 3.4.1 Rural Health Care. Health is another sector of rural social development. Widespread diseases in rural areas are indicators of poor health services. Malaria, tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS infection, blindness are some common leading health problems in India. Malnutrition and anemia are common among children and pregnant women. Nearly 47% children are malnourished. Health forms an important index of H11 man development. Health is a major factor of socio-economic development also. We all agree that the basic objective of rural social development is to improve the quality of life in rural areas. Healthy population plays a key role in achieving the broad goals of development. Health defined as the state of complete physical, mental, social and spiritual well-being and not merely absence of disease and infirmity. The health picture of rural area is far from satisfactory. Some of its important features are as following. It is important to note that there are various health problems in rural areas. Infectious diseases. Many of such infectious diseases are preventable. Malnutrition, especially among women and children, still continues to be a major cause of disease and death. The incidence of diseases like malaria and tuberculosis is still prevalent. As regards health facilities in rural areas, there is acute shortage in ratio of total rural population. The health infrastructure continues to be so inadequate that the plan of health for all has virtually proved to be a gimmick. Currently, about 20% of the rural population is covered under the government health services. Non-availability of doctors, lack of medicines, and grassroots level health functionaries and poor utilization of primary health services further add to the miseries of the rural people. Doctors do not want to work in villages because of poor connectivity, lack of drinking water, inconvenient accommodation, poor sanitation and long hours of no electricity. There is acute shortage of subordinate staff to help run the hospitals in a manner satisfactory to people. This is the reason that 90% of healthcare facilities in rural areas are manned by only one practitioner. Some other indicators of poor health facilities are the following. 98% of urban areas have healthcare faculties compared to only 24% of rural areas. An average resident of rural area has to travel at least 1 kilometer for a common medicine like paracetamol tablet, and 20 kilometers for hospital care or blood test. More than two-thirds population of India live in rural areas. For it, only 20% of hospital beds available in the country have been provided. Rural Health Mission. National Rural Health Mission, NRHM, was launched in 2005 for taking healthcare facilities to the remote places and marginalized people of rural areas. The NRHM's motto is People's Health in People's Hands. The mission emphasizes on the flexibility in utilizing funds for accessible and affordable health services through Panchayati Raj institutions and community organizations. The mission is not only increasing health personnel but providing more funds for health services also. But in the implementation, wide gap has been observed in the proclaimed objectives of NHRM and actual achievements. 3.4.3 Clean drinking water and Senate 30% on. Drinking water supply in India continue to be inadequate, despite long-standing efforts by the various levels of government and communities at improving coverage. None of the Indian states distribute water for more than few hours per day, despite generally sufficient infrastructure. Owing to inadequate pressure, people struggle to collect water even when it is available. According to World Bank, none have performance indicators that compare with average international standard. However, the access to improved sources of water has increased significantly from 72% in 1990 to 88% in 2008. In rural areas where 72% Indian population live, the absence of safe drinking water have forced them to depend on other sources of water. The water from rain, surface or groundwater is generally impure and considered unfit for drinking purpose. Rural people are unaware of the fact that unsafe water is one of major causes of waterborne diseases such as diarrhea, trachoma, filarial, malaria and dengue etc. According to Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, the access to improved source of water in India in the 2008 is given in Table 3.4 Access to improved source of water. Population with safe drinking water, urban 96%, rural 84%, total 88%. Both the Government of India and the state governments have been trying to provide safe drinking water. Despite all the efforts to provide drinking water facilities, there are some shocking facts about availability of water in the house or having reasonable access. There are many villages in the country which have no nearby source of drinking water. In 1984, there were 1.6 lakh villages which had no direct source of water. The National Technology Mission was set up to rectify this problem. The mission adopted the strategy named Integrated Management to ensure sustained supply of water. But merely providing a source of drinking water is not sufficient. The maintenance of the source, the quality of water and proper supply are some important issues. According to Indian norms, access to improved water supply exists if at least 40 liters/capita/day of safe drinking water are provided within a distance of 1.6 kilometers or 100 meter of elevation difference, to be relaxed as per field conditions. There should be at least one pump per 250 persons. According to Annual Report, 2009-10, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, 80% of rural population has access to improved source of water. Around 12% have access of pipe water in their own residence and rest get it through public pipelines. Considerable success has been achieved in meeting drinking water needs of the rural people. About 99% habitations have already got access to safe drinking water. Department of Drinking Water under the Ministry of Rural Development had prepared the program of action plan to cover all rural schools with drinking water facilities. Rural Social Development by 2006-07. Swazildhara. On 25th of December 2002, Swazildhara was launched. Under the scheme of Swazildhara, village community was empowered to formulate and implement the scheme for water, and 90% funding will be from central government and 10% contribution on behalf of village community. You are listening to this audiobook on Audio Learn IGNOU.
3rd April 2004 Rural Sanitation. There is a direct relationship between water, sanitation and health. Consumption of unsafe drinking water, open disposal of human excreta, lack of personal and low hygiene have an indirect bearing on infant mortality rate and are also the cause of number medical problem. If India is to find a place amongst the developed nations, it has to improve sanitation coverage. Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India has initiated various measures in this direction. But in practice, the implementation of sanitation program was not satisfactory in certain pockets. It is a fact that sanitation facilities cannot be utilized by the people in the absence of proper awareness. Sanitation is very important factor in rural social development. Access to safe drinking water and sanitation services are closely related to health of the rural people. Most of the people still defecate in the open space and most of the villages lack waste disposal and drainage systems. Rural people are also ignorant about the consequences of poor sanitation and unhealthy practices. They need hygiene education. Here we would like to acquaint you with the background of Total Sanitation Campaign. In rural India, the Central Rural Sanitation Program was launched in 1986 and was restructured in 1999. The Total Sanitation Campaign, TSC, under the restructured CRSP was launched with effect from 1st April 1999 to follow a community-led and people-centered approach. TSC moved away from the principle of state-wise times allocation primarily based on poverty criterion to a demand-driven approach. The program lays emphasis on information, education and communication, IEC, for demand generation for sanitation facilities. It also emphasizes school sanitation and hygiene education for changing behavior of people from a young age. According to the Ministry of Rural Development, the progress of rural sanitation coverage for last decades is as follows. Table 3.5. Rural sanitation coverage. Year and percentage coverage of rural inhabitations. 1980 to 8101. 1990 to 9109. 2000 to 2001 21.90. 2005 to 2006 34.47. 2006 to 2007 40.40. 2007 to 2008 47.36. 2008 to 2009 54.24. 2009 to 2010 61.45. The above table shows that only 22% of rural families had access to toilets in 2001. This has gone up to 61.45% in 2009 to 10. The Government of India launched total sanitation campaign in 593 districts of the country. To generate awareness among the users, districts and states are taking up activities like organizing mass rallies, celebrating sanitation weeks and following up the interpersonal communication with users and potential users. For this purpose ICDS workers, ASHA workers have joined the campaign. School teachers are also being encouraged to teach and promote sanitary habits in the school. To promote the sanitation program in rural areas, central government started Nirmal Gram Puraskar in 2005. It was to encourage Panchayati Raj institutions to promote total sanitation. 3rd April 2005 Rural housing. Although a number of initiatives were taken from time to time to provide adequate housing facilities to the rural poor, it was only during 1980s that special attention was given to the construction of houses in rural areas, particularly for the poor and weaker sections of the society. Housing is one of the basic needs of man in terms of safety, security and self-esteem. To provide house to the poor, the shelterless and quickly cover the rural housing shortage, Indira Awas Yojana is under implementation. Now, under the scheme per unit assistance has been increased from Rs. 20,000 to Rs. 25,000 in plain areas. Since the inception of the Indira Awas Yojana, about 121 lakh units of houses has been constructed so far. Check your progress. 1. Note: I give your answer in this space given below for each question. 2. Check your answer with the preceding text. 1. Enlist major programs of social development. 2. Describe the achievements in the field of rural sanitation. 3.5 Economic development. Economic development means that the rate of production must be faster than the rate of increase in population. In other words, it is a process which makes people in general better off by increasing their command over goods and services and by increasing the choices open to them. Rural people are poorer because they depend mainly on agriculture and agro-based industries. On the other hand, share of agriculture in overall economy is decreasing. Of agriculture's share in the GNP is already less than 20%, which will go below 10% by the year 2020. Rural societies are unable to make up for the decline in agriculture because now service sector is increasing. Services like hospitals, schools, markets, recreation, etc. are available in urban areas while villages are devoid of these services. Here the question is how to accelerate economic development in rural areas. The foundation of self-sustaining economy for Indian villages has been primary objective of rural development. Economic development is a strategy designed to improve the socio-economic life of the rural community. It covers measures to 1. Increasing production and productivity in agriculture and allied sectors. 2. resource and income generation of rural poor. 3. Availability of credit to rural poor. 4. Promoting marketing facilities for rural sector. Promotion of employment opportunity in villages. 6. Provision of basic amenities for rural sector. Higgins, 1963, held that expenditure on education, health, housing, etc. are not merely means to economic development, in fact they are major components of economic development. There are various factors responsible for the economic development of a country, for example, geographical factors, availability of natural resources, socio-cultural factors, etc. 3.6 Political development. Political development is an important aspect of rural social development. Generally, the distribution of political power in the developing countries is unequal. In India, upper castes and upper class persons and industry groups have ruled the rural masses. Middle, 1970, rightly concluded, but when that pressure from below is almost totally absent, as in most underdeveloped countries, we should not be surprised that the inegalitarian social and economic stratification from colonial times is preserved and that development moves in the direction of greater inequality. Now, political situation has changed in rural India after the 73rd Amendment in the Constitution of India. There is a three-tier system of Panchayat Raj institutions: Zila Panchayat, district level body, Janpad Panchayat, block level body, and Gram Panchayat, at village or cluster of villages. Still, Gram Sabhas have been assigned important responsibilities to make it a vibrant forum of self-governance. There is a provision for reserved seats in Panchayat Raj institutions for rural women, scheduled tribes and scheduled castes. The state of these categories' representation is given in the following table. Table 3.6, Rural Leadership of PRIs in India. Look at the screen for table content. 3.7 Initiatives to change of rural society. There has been a paradigm shift in the policy of rural development for the development to be in consonance with the people's participation and their aspirations. Recently, a number of initiatives in the form of launch of new programs and restructuring the earlier programs to make them more effective in the process of rural social development has been taken. For the poverty alleviation programs, top priority has also been accorded to rural development. There is a progressive increase in the allocation of resources during the various 5-year plans. For the 10th 5-year plan, the allocation of funds for the Rural Development Ministry had been Rs. 76,774 crores. Poverty alleviation programs. To provide work to people and make them self-reliant, the major poverty alleviation schemes are given below. Times Swarnjnati Gram Swarozgar Yojana, SGRY, was launched on 25 September 2001. The objective of this scheme is to provide additional wage employment in the rural areas as also food security, along the creation of durable community assets. The special emphasis was on to provide wage employment to women, scheduled castes, and scheduled tribes and parents of children withdrawn from hazardous occupations. Minimum wages are paid to the workers through a mix of minimum 5 kilograms of food grains and at least 25% in cash. National Food for Work Program, NFUC, has been launched in 150 backward districts of the country by the Honorable Prime Minister on 14 November 2004. It has been made a 100% centrally sponsored scheme so that the backward areas do not suffer because of lack of resources available with the states. National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, 2005. The primary objective of the Act is to enhance the livelihood security of providing at least 100 days of guaranteed wage employment to every poor rural household whose adult members volunteer to do unskilled manual work. Indira Awas Yojana (IGNOU) is under implementation in rural area to provide housing facility for the rural poor. Now under this scheme per unit assistance has been increased from Rs 20,000 to Rs 25,000 in plain and from Rs 22,000 to Rs 27,500 in hilly difficult areas since April 2004. Since inception of the scheme, about 121 lakhs of houses have been constructed so far. Swajildara. This scheme was launched on 25 December 2002 to formulate, implement, operate and maintain drinking water projects by the village community. Total Times Sanitation Campaign. It is under operation in 426 districts of the country. It is also planned to cover all rural schools with sanitation facilities by July 2006. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sahayak Yojana (PMGSY) was launched on 25 December 2000, aiming to bridge the rural-urban gap soon. In order to provide connectivity times by all-weather roads to 1,70,594 unconnected habitations with population of 500 persons or more in the rural areas by the end of 10th plan period. Employment Assurance Scheme, but these schemes were launched in 1999. The objective of scheme was to create wage employment for families below poverty line and improving the quality of life of people in rural areas. 3.8 Let us some UP. In this unit an attempt has times been made to discuss the concept of rural social development. Rural social development is complementary to economic and political development because the economy of any nation depends on human resource development. A special section has been devoted to discuss the programs and strategies of rural social development, i.e., education, healthcare, drinking water, sanitation and housing are core facilities to enhance the quality of living standard of rural masses. It is expected that by the study of this unit you will be able to understand and explain the contributions of programs in rural social development. 3.9 Keywords. Sanitation, keeping places clean and healthy. Hygiene, practice of keeping surroundings clean in order to prevent diseases and dirt. Mission, an organized campaign or course of action with motivation.
Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video with the next chapter.